Righto, Money Miners, welcome back to another week brought to you by the trusted advisors and consistent advisors in drill hole survey instrumentation, Access Mining Technology. Give them a call. They will consistently pick up the phone with a guru on the other end. On to some more inconsistent news. The Australian government. Oh, Jesus Christ, we're getting political these days. Holy snapping duck shit.
It's a bit of a sad day for the mining industry, I'd say.
Yeah, she's bloody talk about some potential precedents being set for the future. Maybe. Fucking lot happening. We'll get it. We're talking about the bloody McPhillamys, Regis's project in New South Wales. Pretty much getting the foot put on it by the environmental minister after they pretty much did everything asked of them. So
crazy.
Yeah, so we're going to get right into that. This is the headline for the day. It's bloody there's a lot of moving parts here. JD, you've even got a bit of silver chat. How good?
Yeah,
silver.
I mean, it's a pretty similar story at Silver Mines, also in New South Wales, also a project that's not going to be going ahead anytime soon. So I think we can wrap the two stories in and around each other and then just have a good discussion about the ramifications. I mean, you say perhaps a precedent for the industry. Let's kind of hope not, right? Yeah,
God, we're literally talking about everything in New South Wales. I've even got a sneaky one at the back about Antimony, which is another New South Wales one. Mate, fucking as a proud New South Welshman, we've won the state of origin, but holy God, they could do better on the friggin' mining front. Far out, driving me nuts.
I think that Antimony one has a strong bit of China about it. But it'd be interesting to chat about.
Yeah, but it's in New South Wales. Yeah, anyway, it's more.
No. Yeah,
it's where I cut my teeth, JD. Right, let's get into it. So, Regis's McPhillamys project. I think we've talked about it a bit. It was, going to be their growth story, you'd say. But, the DFS sort of come back with, pretty hefty CapEx. Grade was sort of, it's like a 1 gram jobby. It's going to be a big operation. They were going through a big process with getting all the approvals for a lot of years. Then there's Section 10 come along. That was
almost 3-4 years ago.
The big overhang, and effectively now, the environmental minister Tanya Plibersek has pretty much put a foot on it and said parts of the project, which is essentially where the TSF has to go, the tailing storage facility, is can't go there because of cultural significance of the land to a set of traditional owners. But there's a lot to go through here. So,
a lot of nuance.
Oh, mate. So for those who don't know, this McPhillamys project, Regis actually bought this back in 2012 from Newmont and Alkane. $150 million all in shares at $4.20 a share. So the share price is now $1.60 today. PFS was done in 2017. DFS come out this year, 2024. Yep. So look at 7 million tonne per annum operation for about, I think, average 187,000 ounces a year. CapEx was sort of up in the billions. It was one of those ones, even at a higher gold price, it's a bit of a lower IRR project.
Yep.
But for this project if it was ever going to work, it has to all be in the one spot. And it's not like you can just truck a bit up the road sort of thing. But we're in a rising gold price environment. So, but this has just really put a bit of a temporary nail in the coffin, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But look, shitload to go through. So, because Regis went into the trading halt on Friday morning, bit after lunch Sydney time.
Yeah.
And announcement out today detailing that, as we said, the Federal Minister for Environment and Water, Tanya Plibersek, she was appointed in June 2022, so she's bloody made a declaration of protection over part of the approved McPhillamys Gold Project, which applies primarily to freehold land, ultimately owned by Regis, but under Section 10 of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Heritage Protection Act. So pretty much where that TSF's going, can't put it there because of these, I guess the start of this river. The river's name.
And this came as like a huge surprise to everyone, including Regis, who had a call today to sort of brief everybody about this. I mean, this project had already been assessed and approved under both state and Commonwealth legislation. So this announcement sort of over the weekend from Minister Plibersek's essentially overridden conclusions that were already made at those state and federal levels, including her own office.
Yeah, the first part that come through earlier last year was the IPC, I think, Independent Planning Commission. So they went through that whole process. That was approved. Then you had the EPBC part of it, which was approved by, you guess, the head of New South Wales and ACT in Environment and Water, which is actually a part of Plibersek and Chris Bowdens' bloody division.
Yep.
So they've actually approved it, but then she's come in now and actually just shit-canned the whole thing effectively. But claiming that this will not stop the mine, just saying they have to find another location for the TSF. But if it was that friggin' simple, you'd do it. Like Jim Byer went through in the call about you can't just move it like that. That area for the TSF's been assessed like geotechnically, water, flora and fauna, safety and everything is the most appropriate place for that TSF. And to go through the whole process again of finding another spot for it, approvals is like essentially another 5 to 10 years. So it just ain't that simple. It might be to someone for the government, but practically it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah, we can keep that IPC in mind. They'll come into play with the silver mines story in a little bit as well. And to wrap a bit more kind of narrative around it, a lot of people asking, why can't you just sort of fence off this area if it is like that on the call? And just for people wondering why or what the answer to that might be, it is essentially the whole tailings area. There is no way around this.
Interesting looking at you can't help but look at the political side of this, because when one person just puts the foot down, you got to look at the history of it. So this Tanya Plibersek, Minister Plibersek, seems like there's been she's done a bit of both and had a bit of backlash last year, because she actually, in terms of blocking mines, because she blocked Clive Palmer's that Central Queensland coal project in 2023, citing potential pollution of the Great Barrier Reef, which was 10 k's away. Also rejected another 2 coal mines in Central Queensland last year. But she also approved 4 coal mines last year. But as a result of that, she and the 2 companies that she approved them for, Whitehaven and MAC, were then taken to the federal court by this Central Environmental Council of Central Queensland regarding the expansion of their Narrabri Underground and the Mount Pleasant mine, both in New South Wales. And they're talking about Great Barrier Reef protection, but those mines are in New South Wales, so I can't figure that one out. And then she also approved 151 coal seam gas wells in Queensland this year for the Cenex Atlas project, which is Gina Reinhart backed. So whatever's going on here after approving that, then going to court and then not approving ones, it's like what is actually happening, especially considering leading into a federal election either at the end of this year or the start of next year. So not consistent, as we said.
No, and I mean, even looking at the media release from the IPC, this is from a state level, back in March of last year. It says the Commission finds that on balance the project, this is McPhillamys, is in the public interest and the application is consistent with the objectives of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, and that the Commission found that the positive impacts resulting from the project, including employment, training, investment and additional economic activity, will outweigh the negative impacts. So and then you've had the further approval here from the Department of Climate Change, Energy, Environment and Water as well. Also approved May of last year.
Yeah, that's the sub one under bloody the ministers for that are Plibersek and Chris Bowen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you look at it there, it says decision approved, controlling provision listed threatened species and communities, and signed off by the branch head for environmental assessments in New South Wales and ACT. And I think there was a mention in the Regis announcement how what they're citing now wasn't even talked about or mentioned as part of the whole approval process prior to this. This has just come out now.
Yep.
From what I remember.
Yeah, you're spot on, Matty. I can read a little snippet from the announcement that kind of relates to that one. The referral made by Regis under the EPBC Act included an assessment on Aboriginal cultural heritage, which at the time the minister's delegate did not note as a point of concern for the project.
Like back in the Section 10 back in October 2020, like as we said, they deemed like that any potential harm to Aboriginal heritage can be acceptably managed through conditions of consent. It was assessed and approved in May 2023 by the delegate, and then you had the Orange Local Aboriginal Land Council were engaged in the process, and they're the actual, and we'll get to this bit, they're the actual statutory
they hold the legal authority to speak for this land,
for
essentially.
that part of the land. And then, so the traditional owners that they're talking about today are actually different. They're not part of that orange one. I think these ones are closer to Bathurst. So it's like a different set of traditional owners that have laid claim to this being of cultural significance. Like to my understanding, there's no like actual physical artifacts or anything that are. It is just like a cultural significance. So Regis are essentially claiming that, the decision by the minister is essentially unprecedented because it's like contradicts both the EPBC and the IPC approval process that was done by our own department, the EPBC, and it's just vetoed the whole thing. And
it's worth tying into that, Matty, that they were pretty eager on the call to stress that this is freehold land, essentially land owned by Regis, which is, used for grazing cattle and whatnot, as it has been for a couple hundred years now. It's not Crown land. That was just something that really stuck out from the call today.
Yeah, so essentially cattle have been eating there and shitting in that river for bloody hundreds of years, and this what they've put in place today, and the way it seems like the way, and Jim mentioned it on the call, the way they interpret it, that even now, because of this, you can't even have cattle on the land, which they've been there for friggin' hundreds of years. They've essentially got to fence it off and protect it. So it was all on the basis of the mining side. So, and that setting a precedent for, I know, and look, we talked about, like last year when that was potentially, we were going down this road in Western Australia about the whole, what was it, like the traditional owner approvals for everything, which could have applied for bloody farmers and everything to get all these surveys done. And like this is essentially pretty similar.
Yeah.
What's happening here. So, because like this land is owned by Regis. So, yeah, bloody, it's we're fucking learning a lot at the moment, GC.
Learning a lot.
Talk about politics.
Government politics.
I've never paid an interest till I did this. And this is interestingly on the back of just recently the whole Jabiluka thing.
As well, yeah.
Very only a couple of weeks ago, like bloody putting their foot on that saying, no, that's going into Kakadu National Park. We're just making the decision right now. And there's another questions about who has actually been properly engaged in this process.
And who is the right people to engage as part of this process? Because I think one comment which is quite important is this is not so much an argument of, whether a site is sacred and should be protected. We're all for responsible mining, doing things the right way and working collectively with the traditional owners. This is more so a discussion about the process. How can you say this is okay and approved and then it's not? That's what I don't understand. If this was identified as part of these processes that are set out by the government, say, hey, look, I know we've identified a few sites for a TSF, but this is not one that you can do. Regis would have then, done the work to, advance other alternatives at that time. But that's already been and gone now. So why are we talking about that now again? I'm also confused. If there's a process that's been followed and, supposedly the right parties have been engaged, consulted as they should, and then this has happened. I just don't understand.
And because the Wiradjuri people that she's cited as the TOs that she's engaged with here, but it sounds like then this Orange Local Aboriginal Land Council that were the people that Regis were engaged with. I'm not sure if the Wiradjuri people if Regis engaged with them, or they didn't know that they were going to claim ownership of that part of the land.
It's so hard to say.
They couldn't. It sounds like Regis could not have done any more than they possibly could have done in terms of following the regulatory process.
And
that's super well said, Ali. Yeah, I totally agree with what you've said there, and I'll put a pin on it because I think we can chat about it more after the silver mines, because I think there's heaps of comments to be made about the process. I just add that Regis still don't have a heap of information. They're still waiting on the sort of quote unquote official ruling or whatever it's called from the government to understand what exactly is gone down and what they can do going on forward from here.
Because you look at we'd say the impact of it, the social and economic impact. So they were saying 580 full-time jobs in construction, around 290 went in production, about $200 million worth of state royalties to the state. The direct and indirect benefits it can provide to local Indigenous communities, benefits and opportunities to local businesses, local communities. Like, you can just see the impact that a decision from one politician can have.
100%. And you even had the head of AMEC, Warren Pearce, sort of echoed these comments as well in an AMEC statement, and it was also in the AFR around the decision, sort of claiming that sort of as we discussed before, Indigenous groups in New South Wales had differing views about the significance of the site and questioned if the right people had been listened to. And as Warren said, this decision affects the local community of Blaney, the traditional owners and the mining industry. Described it as a lose-lose-lose situation.
So what is it? 3 plus 1 equals 1.
-5 or something.
it's right. Anyway, this has been going on for friggin' years. Like, as you said, asset purchase in 2012, PFS from 2017. A bit's happened since 2017.
I mean, Trump has been and gone. COVID has been and gone.
Oh.
Brexit has happened. You were still on the jumbo.
I was just learning the jumbo.
You were just learning the jumbo. Me
yeah.
and JD were young whippersnappers at Argonauts still. I mean, a lot's happened since then compared to other sort of major projects and their approvals in Australia as well. So, guys, sort of taking all that information in, what do you think this ultimately means for Regis going forward with McPhillamys?
The first thing that kind of springs to mind, and I mean, we're at 2024 now. This investment was made in 2012, $150 million. Of course, it was in script, like you guys said at the beginning there, but it doesn't scream out as a stellar investment. And, was this project really going to go ahead? We can kind of have another debate about that. We spoke about this when the DFS came out and the numbers didn't look too good just a month or so ago. What do you reckon, Matty?
Oh, and it goes. It's to the point. It's like nearly the project is irrelevant in this story today in terms of just the whole process and the precedents it sets. Like, it's heavily weighted to, I guess, to say it's a poor investment is sort of impacted by the fact of how long the approvals and how difficult it's been and the time and money they've had to spend on that side of things that it sounds like was fucking out of their control.
Absolutely agreed. Yeah.
But I do agree. It's like, and we'll get into what other options they've got, but it just looks like this project is, for it to work, it has to all be there. It has to probably all go right. It has to, there is issues with it in terms of it's a zero discharge site. So a lot of capital has to go into, ponds, and you can't just run water out of it. They went through all that to try and and it's a big capital investment, but potentially long life, and you might make your money back from it eventually. But it seemed to have to be done this way to work. So
yeah,
it's one of
if they
those
could have
things
got
like
the
whether
project,
dependent on the bloody gold price and how they fund it, and if there's bloody hedging in place determines whether it'd be a very profitable operation at the moment. But yes, it wasn't screaming out as a low risk play. No.
But that's
well,
low risk from an operational standpoint, right?
Yeah. So I guess they're two separate issues in a way.
Yeah. And even like financially, right, as you said, JD, I think a lot of people out in the market sort of discounted McPhillamys as a true growth option for Regis on the basis of, financials at least anyway. I mean, consensus NAV for McPhillamys was about 20 cents or $150 million, which is about 12% of Regis's market cap. And, funnily that Regis McPhillamys contributes about 60% of Regis's reserves. So, but I think there could be, as difficult and shocking of a news as this is, you could see it as a silver lining for Regis. I mean, given the sort of the financial and the operational elements, was it better for Regis to go, hey, we've done the work and we've actually got more interesting and attractive options over here, so we're going to kill this one, or have the government kill it for you to give you a good sort of, not excuse, but a reason to focus your attention elsewhere rather than making that call themselves.
Yeah, and it's a gold price bet. Like, if gold's bloody $4,000 an ounce by the time this is mined and they haven't got too much hedging commitments, they probably would make good money out of it just because of the scale of it. But it's like, $1 billion worth of capex to get it there, and a lot of that capex is tied up in like the water pipeline to get the sufficient amount of water there to, I think that was about 100 odd mil. And then, as I said, the ponds because of the zero discharge, the mill, like that, there was about 600 or 700 million just in that sort of key infrastructure to process it and maintain the site. So that's like the question is, right, is there any other option outside of this? Because this comes back to the whole, it sounds like it is becoming increasingly difficult and in this case near impossible to build and permit a processing plant.
Even if you do it by the book.
In Australia. So it's like the only mine near there is Cadia. It's about 40 to 50 Ks away. Big 36 million tonne per annum plant owned by Newmont. Could Regis it sounds like they could mine this mine. They just can't put a TSF in there, which means you can't put a mill in. Could they actually mine it, truck it bloody 50 Ks if you negate, $500 million worth of capex to do that? Would that work? I think sounds like they'd still have to put in a lot of that pond infrastructure because it's a zero discharge site, 1 gram dirt, trucking it 50 Ks, probably too small for a bloody Newmont to even consider. So it's probably just the economics just don't really add up. It just, as I said before, it sounds like if this operation was going to work, it has to be all in the same spot, run efficiently on a big scale to actually bring in the chockies. So they're essentially being they're on hold until there's a bloody doesn't look like there's going to be a backflip on the decision from this government. They'll literally be hoping for they said they're going to go down the legal route with it, but it'd either have to be a change in government that would actually put this through or something in the High Court to actually overturn it, which, geez, you'd be bloody, that could take freaking years.
Yeah. So, and I guess, I mean, what's next? I mean, there was sort of a lot of questions on the call today with Jim about sort of, how does, capital get reallocated potentially from, McPhillamys to their other sites and things like that. But I think they're just trying to understand the situation themselves and get some sort of definitive plan and timing on what this actually means for all of them. But, of course we can certainly speculate about what that means for them next. I think my conclusion is it's pretty much put a nail in the coffin for their growth project, whether you believed in it as a growth project or not. They're now even more desperate for something outside of, Duketon and Tropicana. What it could be, I don't know. Is it organic? Is it more work at, Duketon? That is their only asset that they operate. Tropicana, they've got a non-operating interest in. Do they do something inorganic? Do they buy something in and around their area or around that Laverton, Leonora region? Who knows?
Yeah. God, they could buy a Spartan. But that's like $1.5 billion there. So, and then you got to put the capital in as well for the mill and everything.
Yeah.
So it's like, this is definitely the rate this is going, because this is not going to be if it did get overturned or whatever, like that's years down the road, well after the time they need the frigging gold.
But even if it was overturned, you'd think like, what's the chance that something like this could happen again, and not just within, we'll probably touch on it a bit more later, not just within Regis's portfolio, but other companies' portfolios as well. It does make you a little nervous.
Yeah, so it's like I think the whole.
Even if you are trying to do the right thing.
What's been thrown around? Gold Road's the one that keeps getting thrown around for Regis, tying up with them. As you said, whether something around that Laverton district, we run the ruler over bloody Magnetic the other week, and that doesn't look like the most. That's still years away if someone decides to mine that, because it hasn't even got a mining license yet.
No, it doesn't. It needs a bit more work.
So unless it's something else pretty bloody left field. JBD, you got any bloody punts on you?
Well, Jim seemed pretty fed up with Australia in its entirety, so I wonder if he's
don't blame him.
Looking overseas. The other thing I'd add to your comments earlier, Ali, on the NAV, obviously, consensus we're quoting there comes from the sell side, calling it kind of 12% of the market cap or 150 million bucks. It's interesting to parallel that with the share price today. It's flat. The buyers or the owners of the stock clearly didn't attribute too much value to McPhillamys. So, that kind of bodes with what we'd said about it on the back of your analysis of all the undeveloped projects out there, and then going back a little bit before that on the back of the DFS as well.
Yes. Oh, on a more positive note, CRE Insurance. That
is a positive note,
that's
actually.
just more positive. Holy snap and duck shit. I never thought I'd think of Africa as a mining jurisdiction to be similar to Australia. It's bloody similar parallels today. Since Australia's becoming like Africa due to the polys, mate, CRE's African insurance expertise is going to be bloody handy for this Australian mining industry
handy.
Going forward. Bloody JD, you heard about the offer?
Mate, inform me and all the money miners, please.
Any of these mining companies out there that just feel a bit bloody, they're a bit risque averse. Give bloody Dave, Adam or Tari a bloody call from CRE. They'll do a free audit on your existing insurance that you have in place. See if you've got any gaps or exposures that you mightn't even know about.
That's awesome.
For free. And you just take it and say, cheers, lads. That's the bloody, mate, caught up with them last week. I vetted them as GCs. Jesus Christ, they know insurance. I've never been so interested in insurance in my life. I love it. Love insurance. I got a couple of extra car policies last week. I've got the bug. So hit them up to take a look for you. Phone number's in the show notes and one of the owners picks up.
Go CRE.
Oh, love it. JD, another interesting Regis-y style story. Silver mines.
Let's
not
keep
all
the
silver
good
mines,
times going.
Just the company.
Just the companies. So SVL on the ASX So similar, like you say, to Regis, mate, also in New South Wales, and also a kind of project that won't be going ahead anytime soon. We'll start this one up by flashing up the spark chart so people can get a feel. And here, what you really notice straight away is a massive candlestick down and the risk of being a single asset company. That's where Regis has a bit of a saving grace. So they have lost over 60% of their market cap in a couple months. They lost about 50% of that market cap in a couple days. So they're around a $250 million company just last week, and they're now a sort of 120 million-ish market cap company.
Yeah, right. Buddy, so what's the sequence of events here, JD?
So I'll give you a bit of the sort of legalese type first to talk through what's happened in the courts, and then we'll give a bit of background on what's actually happened. But essentially, early last week, they came in saying we're going to get our an update on these proceedings that have been going on for a few months now. And on Friday, they went into a trading halt and then came out with what had actually happened. So they've got this group called Bingman. They had essentially been challenging the development consent, which is essentially their right to get development underway for the project.
Where in this project, this is down similar area, is it, JD? Down near Mudgee, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So 30 Ks from Mudgee, 260 odd Ks from Sydney.
Yeah.
So we'll chuck up a map and people can have a look. Now, I said that IPC group, the Independent Planning Commission, before. Now, they were involved here because that's who Bingman was challenging, as well as, Silver Mines in the same sort of process. And, lo and behold, the appeal comes through and the court has upheld the challenge put forward by Bingman. And what this essentially means is that Silver Mines cannot develop the project. They need to go back to the drawing board. But to get into the details of what has actually gone on here and what the kind of point of debate is, I think it's worth fleshing out what the project is all about, because similar to what we've just spoken about before with Regis, you're in farming country, you've got towns nearby. It's not like in the outback in WA. There's a bit more to it. It's rolling kind of countryside, and we're talking about a silver mine with a lead zinc byproduct. So that lead byproduct was a point of debate amongst the local community there, although that isn't actually what ultimately stopped the project from going forward on Friday.
All right, so give us what's been the timeline so far, how it's gone.
So kind of like McPhillamys, this has taken ages to go through all the steps. In 2018, feasibility study came out. The EIS was completed and development application was submitted in mid-2020. State approvals came through in April of 23, so last year, and they were going to launch, their final investment decision later this year. So they were pretty far along. And then you get this appeal in March, and Silver Mines win that appeal to start with, they win the initial proceedings, and then Bingman come in and appeal it, and that's what's chucked a spanner in the works just on Friday.
So
to give a bit of detail,
who is actually this Bingman group? Who are they?
Oh, thanks for breaking me up, Ali. They're a group that came around in the 90s. They're a group that's sort of local to the region there. And what they're kind of putting forward is that the potential environmental and health disasters, that kind of relates to lead and all these, other aspects of the mine, dust and so on, would hamper the farming nature of the region as well as the tourism in the region. But it's much more of like a kind of technicality on why the project isn't going forward. They put this environmental impact statement forward in 2020, like I said, but they didn't include this transmission line. So there's this 13-kilometre transmission line, and that wasn't included in the assessment. And then the Supreme Court Justice has come out and said, you can't go forward with this because the plan of what you actually want to do doesn't include that transmission line. And one way or another, whether it's positive or negative, that transmission line is going to have an impact. So that previous ruling is, to no effect. And here we are, the company's share price is halved. They're going to speak with their lawyers and all these things. And then on the flip side, you've got the group that you just raised there, Ali, talking about like, hey, this isn't really what we actually wanted, but we'll take the win, And to be clear, it's not done and dusted, because these guys could potentially still look at other power options. But kind of like Jim was saying at Regis, that is a lengthy process. It takes ages to knuckle down on what you want and the plan you want to put forward, to ultimately decide, and to rejig that whole plan can take years.
It's interesting. It's power lines, the things that have squashed it, considering how many fucking power lines have got to go in for all these renewable plans throughout the bloody state, all these transmission corridors they've got to put in to make this whole renewable thing work. So it just completely contradicts that. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think this
News.
one.
I suppose they haven't hit me up yet.
I don't think this one, Matty, is as grim as what you went through with Regis. I think there's still options, but you're in a rock and a very hard place there, picking between two pretty bad outcomes for these mining companies.
Yeah, I don't know. I like silver mines.
Why's that?
Well, the best thing about mining silver, it's the same colour as these.
Hey!
Check these out.
That's a TSI bolt.
A bloody DSI friction bolt and a DSI posi mix bolt. Been bloody sent to us. They're silver. They're silver in colour. These look like some of the bolts I tried to put in, like after I bent the fuck out of them and then snapped them off, and there just wasn't much left. Bloody brilliant. If you think silver, you think DSI. You know why?
Why is that?
Silver is like gold. It's a safe haven. DSI, it is the safe haven for ground support supply. Mate, do you know silver is also the best conductor of electricity out of all the metals?
Really?
Oh, better than copper, better than bloody aluminium. It is the best. Just like DSI is the best ground support supplier in the world.
I love
all
it.
exactly the same. Think silver, think DSI.
Think the best.
Think the best. Cheers for the donation,
well said,
Ernie.
Matty.
Love it. Oh, God, we've got to put some bloody... That's why we've got to have bloody sponsors. We've got to bring some positivity to the mining industry. Fuck me dead. God, that's what the economy's backed on.
Hopefully the mining companies can bring the positivity next time, Matty, but I think we should get into a bit of discussion. I've spoken about enough what has actually happened specifically, but I think it's sort of time to wrap the two together and have a bit of a yarn about what this kind of means. And I know you've sort of spun up some thoughts about investment, investor confidence in Australia, whether that be, foreign direct investment or just local funds and whatnot, look into the mining industry. What have you sort of come to on that front?
Well, I think we'll probably quote old Warren Pearce from AMEC, who's obviously AMEC do a bloody shitload for the mining industry and with this sort of stuff as you'd say they're a
industry
bit of
body.
They're an industry body, the middleman. So they're bloody heavily involved in this, and they do a lot of bloody good work. Forgive them for not giving us the award at that ceremony. But they've outweighed that by getting involved in this. So this is what Warren Pearce said. So this is incredibly disappointing decision. This is in regard to Regis. Incredibly disappointing decision that lacks reason and common sense and sets a truly terrible precedent for investment risk in Australia. If any project, no matter how thoroughly consulted, negotiated, supported and assessed, can be knocked over by the objections of only a few people and at the end of the process, then how can any company or investor have confidence to invest in Australia? Wow. So, as he said, like one government official in this case of Regis has contradicted the entire approval process and just put a foot down. And
arguably undermined it
parallels to friggin', it feels like we're in North Korea or Congo or bloody Sierra Leone at the moment. Fuck me. Like, to think that you'd class Australia to have sovereign risk due to like approvals and permits is friggin' absurd. Where mining's the biggest contributor to our economy. It's just fucking
mad.
Yeah. I just think it's friggin' mad. So what do you think, JD?
Mate, I couldn't agree more. I think talking about mining investment in Australia, in New South Wales specifically, I mean, there were so many fascinating call-outs in the call put on by Regis, and it was interesting the concern they had about operating projects. And it was very raw, the call. It's obviously been a very busy weekend for the guys there, but the concerns they had about projects already in operation, who knows, like I said, they haven't got the official docs and all that sort of stuff. So maybe we'll sort of reserve our judgment on that front. But if this throws into risk projects that are operating, that have been operating for a number of years, then I think it's a sort of serious cause for alarm. And I mean, we need to look at this whole process. I think that's the takeaway from our discussion today for both these sorts of companies. Like, these are processes that take years and years and years, already way too long. What gives anyone the confidence to go forward with these once they receive the approvals, and then they can still have the project or the approvals or the permits or whatever it might be? There's so many different angles to it, pulled off them. Who's going to come and do business in Australia?
Yeah, and I'd hate to think that this on the back of the Jabiluka thing and how abrupt all that stuff was and the timing, I'd hate to think this is actual just political gamesmanship going into an election, like just for strategy.
Never know.
And I wouldn't fucking be surprised what these bloody clowns get up to. And but the work that goes in by these mining companies, which is, fucking funded by, operations, but shareholder money as well. And the time that goes into these processes, and then they friggin' treat it like this, is that fucking disrespectful and demeaning to the mining companies that fucking work tirelessly. And coming from people that have got no friggin' mining or business experience at all running the country, it drives me fucking nuts.
We spoke about NIMBYism in the Western world, and we spoke about it in the context of Serbia not too long ago and Canada before that. It's a similar story in so many different countries, and we've spoken about it with various guests on the show in every single nook of the so-called Western world. And obviously every project shouldn't be developed. There should be a rigorous approvals process to get projects online, but you shouldn't have a small minority of people overruling projects that have already received their approvals processes, because it can shatter the investment confidence. And, that might happen bit by bit. You might chip away at that investor confidence slowly, but all of a sudden, you've wasted so much capital, so much human capital, so much energy and time from people that it just, I'm a bit perplexed by the whole thing. It's super frustrating, and I think the processing approvals, timeline needs a serious reassessment in Australia. I mean, look at the New South Wales government royalties and what they've kind of done on that front. Mining brings in $6 billion in royalties in New South Wales alone. Now, 90% of that comes from coal projects, and they've again been increased from the 1st of July 2024. That's not specifically what I want to talk about here, but the repercussions of this, it shortens the life, it lifts them on the cost curve, it makes them a bit more uneconomic, and maybe it's right to have them adjusted over time, with inflation and all these sort of things, but it gives a sugar hit to the government. It gives a bit of a sugar hit, but it puts into question all the jobs. 40,000 people in New South Wales are directly employed by mining, another 7,000 people in the supply chain. And whilst I think some of these ministers think there isn't a serious repercussion, or there isn't a repercussion beyond just the company they're talking about, I think there actually is. I think, it's not just that company. It's not just Regis in this case. It's not just silver mines, but it is all the other, the majors around the world that might look to come and invest in the state. And they're thinking, hang on, we might not do that. And that, $6 billion of royalties, I know heaps of it comes from coal, but sooner or later those projects will run out. And that's going to be a big hole. And we probably don't even need to get into the government debt that's exploded fourfold in New South Wales alone over the past few years. But it is a key source of revenue, royalties, taxation income from the employees there that has heaps and heaps of flow-on effects that I just feel haven't been totally taken into account in this scenario.
No, I agree with you, JD, and even just Minister Plibersek's comments about, they've identified, four other options for a TSF to put there, so it's just move the TSF. I think that's sort of what come across in that statement as a bit of ignorance, like, oh, just move the TSF and it's sort of, I'm not, affecting the mine, like it's fine. It's sort of like, well, actually there's a lot more involved than just moving the TSF, and for all the reasons Jim outlined in his call, that it's not just that straightforward. There's just, I don't know, seems to be a bit of ignorance with respect to how this practically can impact a mine site or the mining industry more broadly.
Yeah, complete ignorance. They wouldn't even know. They would never have worked on a mine site. And speaking about royalties, JD, they need all the help they can get. Look at all the royalties the government aren't getting from the durries now since the vapes have come in. Like, mate, that's fucking we need the mining industry to bring the royalties back, because bloody Champion Ruby ain't bloody getting sold like it used to be.
Mate, we could talk for hours about government debt, but I think we should steer clear of that one for today.
Oh, right. Bit of a random one to finish on. This is saw this
Antimony.
Antimony. Saw this article end of last week that China are placing an export ban on antimony. So antimony's widely used in ammunition and other military applications. I think it's flame retardant as well. It's on the Australia's critical minerals list. And it sparked my attention because the first ever mine I worked at was the Hillgrove mine near Armidale in New South Wales.
There you go.
It's a gold antimony mine. It's the largest antimony deposit in Australia at this stage. And it recently I was there when it was Straits, which then I think Straits went into Aeris, got put on care and maintenance, and sort of had a bit of a pilot plan he set up sort of thing. Recently got bought by Regis Resources, who they were exploring for lithium down in bloody south of WA. Recently bought the Hillgrove mine. It's had a few people have a crack at this thing, but the antimony price, I'll bring up a chart, has doubled in the past few months. And Larvotto up 50% today on the news. They've got reserve grades of 1.2% stibnite. And then you've also got Southern Cross Gold. That's the bolter that's been doing the exploration down in Victoria. So they're gold antimony as well. So their results today are 0.9% and 1.7% stibnite. So stibnite is the antimony mineral. So it's amazing how one news article can come out and you start looking at the grade of antimony.
There you go,
just like that. So, no, that was interesting. Something, a mineral that never gets talked about, but it's doubled. So, and there's not many options for it in Australia.
So that's
probably very interesting.
The only good news story to come out of New South Wales.
Oh, no, it was good. It was bloody God, of course. That was the first ever join on. So I'm walking around with 2 left feet as per usual. And, it's bloody, so I caused more harm than good there, no doubt. It's a fucking pain in the ass. Sorry to all those people that I worked with. Shout out Jeremy Rawlings. Here's a fun fact. The superintendent there, the foreman, he was part of the rescue crew for Beaconsfield.
Oh, the trapped miners.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
He assisted getting the 2 guys out of there.
What a legend.
He was overseeing putting the pilot hole in and everything.
Wow.
Yeah. So
love getting an insight into the young adulthood of Matty Michael.
Back in the day. Back is fucking cold there. Yeah. It's only an hour and a half from your hometown in Inverell.
Oh, good on you.
Might go back to get it going.
I'm sure
I'll get me on the jumbo there. Go back down the decline. Oh, very good. Righto. That's bloody
bit more of a downbeat episode.
We'll
have to find something
so positive
something good to talk about tomorrow.
No, but it's downbeat, but we're fucking sticking up for the mining industry.
We're sticking up for Australia too, mate.
And Australia.
Hopefully things can sort of come to their senses. Don't like getting too political on the show, and really want to talk about it from a but you want to talk about it from a a non-partisan sense. You want common sense in government. I don't care who's in power for that. You just want policies and procedures that make the most of the time and effort and capital that gets sunk into these things.
You know what else is common sense, JD? using access mining technology.
Yeah, pretty
Great segue.
Top of the show.
They're pretty much the anti-government. They just make sense. Yeah, that's it.
Common sense.
Who else makes sense to you, GC?
Oh, mineral mining services.
That's, a lot of sense there.
VRIFY, obvious. SMEC Power and Technology.
Did that make much sense to you when you were getting explained?
Initially
VSTs?
no, but now yes. DSI earlier in the show, Silverstone, CRE Insurance at the top of the show as well, Greenlands Equipment, K-Drill, and U-Spark.
Hootaroo, money miners.
Hootaroo.
Go Australia!
Go Australia.
Go Australia.
The information contained in this episode of Money of Mine is of general nature only and does not take into account the objectives, financial situation or needs of any particular person. Before making any investment decision, you should consult with your financial advisor and consider how appropriate the advice is to your objectives, financial situation and needs.